The Saturday afternoon rush had turned Carter's market into complete chaos. Shopping carts clattered across the polished floor. Children begged for candy. Cashiers scanned groceries as fast as they could. Every checkout lane stretched halfway down the aisle. At register 7, 29-year-old Naomi Carter smiled at each customer, even though her feet had been aching since sunrise. She wasn't just working another shift. She was counting every dollar. Her 10-year-old son, Jordan, needed new asthma medication. Her rent was already 5 days overdue, and if she missed one more payment, they would lose the tiny apartment they had struggled so hard to keep. Still, she smiled, because customers deserved kindness, even when life wasn't kind to her. Then, something strange caught her eye near the fresh produce section. An elegant elderly woman suddenly grabbed the shopping cart with both hands. Her breathing became shallow, her vision blurred. The bag of apples slipped from her fingers and rolled across the floor. People noticed. Nobody stopped. Some looked away. Others simply walked around her. One man even muttered, "Somebody should call an employee." Naomi didn't hesitate. She left her register before thinking twice. "Ma'am." She knelt beside the woman. "Can you hear me?" The elderly woman's lips trembled. I can't." Her words disappeared into silence. Naomi gently checked her pulse. Weak, much weaker than it should have been. She noticed the medical bracelet hidden beneath the woman's sleeve. Diabetes. Naomi's heart raced. "My manager can yell later," she whispered to herself, "but if I wait, she might not survive." She shouted toward another cashier, "Call 911. Then she rushed to the refrigerated drinks. Not soda. Not water, orange juice. Exactly what the woman needed. She carefully lifted the woman's head. "Small sips, that's it, you're doing great." Within moments, the woman's breathing slowly steadied. Color returned to her face. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. "You stayed." She whispered. Naomi smiled softly. "Of course I stayed." Around them, the entire supermarket had fallen silent. Customers watched from every direction. Some pulled out their phones. Others simply stared, not because someone had collapsed, but because one cashier had cared enough to stop. Just then, a furious voice echoed across the store. "Naomi." Store manager Rick Dawson stormed toward them, his face burning with anger. "What do you think you're doing?" Naomi looked up, still supporting the elderly woman. She almost collapsed. "I don't care," Rick shouted. "You abandoned your register during the busiest hour of the day." Naomi couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I was trying to save her." Rick pointed toward the checkout lanes. "You just cost this store thousands of dollars." The elderly woman slowly turned toward him, still weak, still trembling. She tried to speak, "Please." But Rick never let her finish. Instead, he reached into his folder, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and shoved it toward Naomi. "Hand me your name badge." "You're fired." For a moment, Naomi simply stared at the termination notice. The supermarket around her faded into silence. The customers, the checkout scanners, even the crying child somewhere behind aisle 4, everything blurred together. She had just lost the only income keeping her family afloat. Rick folded his arms. "Turn in your badge." Naomi slowly unclipped it from her apron. She looked down at the little plastic name tag. Naomi Carter. She had worn it every day for almost 4 years. Never late, never written up, never once called in sick, and today she was leaving with nothing. The elderly woman reached for Rick's arm. "You can't do this." Her voice was still weak. "She helped me." Rick forced a polite smile. "Ma'am, I'm glad you're feeling better. But company policy is company policy. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." He interrupted. "If every employee abandoned their register whenever there was a problem, this place would fall apart." Naomi quietly picked up her purse. "It's okay." She looked at the older woman and smiled. "I'm just glad you're safe." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "What is your name, dear?" "Naomi. Naomi Carter." The elderly woman gently squeezed her hand. "I won't forget you." Naomi smiled politely. Most people said things like that. Almost nobody meant them. She walked toward the exit carrying a small cardboard box with her apron, a framed picture of her son, and the coffee mug Jordan had painted for her at school. World's best mom. Outside. The Texas heat felt heavier than usual. She sat inside her old Honda for nearly 10 minutes. She couldn't start the engine. How was she supposed to tell Jordan? How was she supposed to tell her mother that they had lost everything again? Across the city, a sleek black SUV pulled through the gates of one of Houston's most exclusive neighborhoods. The elderly woman looked out the window quietly. The driver glanced into the mirror. Mrs. Whitmore. Should I inform Mr. Whitmore now? She nodded slowly. Yes. But don't tell him I nearly collapsed. The driver hesitated. I'm afraid he'll find out anyway. He always does. 20 minutes later, the front doors of an enormous estate opened. A tall man in his early 40s hurried down the marble staircase. His tailored suit suggested power. His worried eyes suggested something else entirely. Mother. He wrapped his arms around her. What happened? She smiled gently. I scared everyone more than I scared myself. He noticed the hospital wristband. His expression changed instantly. Who was with you? A young cashier. She recognized the signs before anyone else. She probably saved my life. He exhaled slowly. I'll have flowers delivered. His mother shook her head. No, I don't want flowers. I want justice. He frowned. What do you mean? They fired her. He froze. They. What? They fired the young woman. Because she chose to save me. For several seconds, neither of them spoke, then his jaw tightened. What's her name? Naomi Carter. Find her. Immediately. But not as the CEO of Whitmore Global. His assistant looked confused. Then how? Mrs. Whitmore answered before her son could. Find her as the woman, whose life she refused to walk away from. Jonathan Whitmore slowly nodded. Whoever this Naomi Carter was, she had no idea. That the worst day of her life had just caught the attention of one of the most powerful families in America. Naomi didn't say a word during the drive home. The cardboard box sat on the passenger seat. Every time she glanced at it, it reminded her that 4 years of loyalty had ended in less than 4 minutes. She parked outside a weathered 2-story apartment building on Houston's east side. The paint on the walls had begun to peel. One porch light flickered. Kids played basketball in the cracked parking lot. It wasn't much, but it was home before opening the apartment door. Naomi forced herself to smile. Jordan deserved a mother, not another problem, the moment she stepped inside. Her 10-year-old son came running. Mom, I got an A on my science project. He proudly held up the paper. Naomi hugged him tightly. I'm so proud of you. Jordan pulled back. Mom, why are you home so early? She looked away. I had a rough day. His smile slowly disappeared. You lost your job. Didn't you? Naomi's eyes widened. How did you know? You only call me champ when something bad happens. For a second, she couldn't speak. Then she nodded. Jordan quietly wrapped his arms around her again. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Those words coming from a 10-year-old nearly broke her heart that evening. The three of them sat around a tiny kitchen table, Naomi, Jordan, and her grandmother, Evelyn. The dinner was simple, vegetable soup, cornbread, and silence. Finally, Evelyn looked up. So, what happened? Naomi told them everything. The woman collapsing, leaving the register, the orange juice, the firing. Rick Dawson's cold expression. When she finished, her grandmother leaned back in her chair. I raised you to help people. I'll never apologize for that. Naomi sighed, but kindness doesn't pay rent. No, Evelyn answered softly. But character pays something money never can. Naomi wanted to believe her. She truly did. But the rent notice taped to the refrigerator said otherwise across town, inside Whitmore Global's headquarters. Jonathan Whitmore stood silently in front of a wall-sized window overlooking downtown Houston. His chief of staff, Daniel Brooks, entered carrying a folder. We found her. Jonathan turned. So, Daniel placed the file on the desk. Naomi Carter, 29, single mother, worked at Carter's Market for nearly 4 years. Never received a disciplinary warning. Jonathan flipped through the pages. Excellent attendance, outstanding customer reviews. Employee of the month, 3 different times. Then his expression hardened. Why was she really fired? Daniel opened another document. The official report says she abandoned her register. Jonathan kept reading. Something didn't make sense. If that's true, why were there 23 customer statements praising her actions? Daniel slid another folder across the desk. Because those statements disappeared. Jonathan looked up sharply. What? The store manager never forwarded them to corporate. He only submitted complaint reports. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. So corporate never saw the full story. No, they saw the version he wanted them to see. For several long seconds, the office remained silent. Finally, Jonathan closed the folder. Book me a meeting with Carter's Market's regional president. Daniel nodded. For tomorrow morning. Jonathan shook his head. No. For 8 o'clock tonight. Daniel blinked. They've already gone home. Jonathan calmly picked up his phone. They'll come back. Meanwhile, Naomi sat alone on the apartment balcony after Jordan had gone to bed. The city lights shimmered in the distance. She opened her banking app. Balance, $147, $63. She closed the phone immediately, for the first time in years. Fear felt heavier than hope. Just then, her phone vibrated. Unknown number, she almost ignored it, almost. Hello. A calm woman's voice answered, Good evening. May I speak with Naomi Carter? This is Naomi. My name is Amelia Grant. I work for the Whitmore family. Naomi frowned. I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong number. We don't. There was a brief pause. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore has asked to meet you. Naomi's heartbeat slowed. The woman from the supermarket. Yes. She has something important she wants to tell you. Naomi looked out into the night. She had no idea. That one phone call was about to change the course of her life forever. That one phone call was about to change the course of her life forever. The next morning, Naomi stood outside the towering glass headquarters of Whitmore Global. She looked down at her only blazer. It was nearly 6 years old. She had ironed it twice the night before, still. It looked out of place among the luxury cars pulling into the private entrance. For a moment, she considered walking away. What am I even doing here? She whispered, before she could turn around. A woman in a navy suit approached with a warm smile. Ms. Carter. Naomi nodded. I'm Amelia. Mrs. Whitmore has been waiting for you. Waiting, that word alone made Naomi nervous. People like the Whitmores didn't wait for people like her. The private elevator opened directly into the executive floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire Houston skyline. Everything felt quiet, expensive, perfect. Naomi had never seen anything like it. The conference room doors opened. Eleanor Whitmore stood immediately. The elegant woman walked straight toward Naomi and hugged her, not a polite handshake, a genuine hug. Naomi froze. I've been hoping I'd see you again, Eleanor said softly. Naomi smiled. I'm just happy you're feeling better. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. Jonathan Whitmore stepped forward, tall, confident, calm. Ms. Carter. Thank you for coming. Naomi nodded politely. I honestly thought you just wanted to say thank you. Jonathan looked at his mother, then back at Naomi. We do. But that's not the only reason. He slid a thin folder across the table. Naomi opened it. Inside was a job offer. She blinked, then looked again. Community Outreach Director, Whitmore Foundation. Annual salary, $145,000. Full medical benefits, retirement, paid tuition, housing assistance. Naomi stared at the number. She had never imagined earning even half that amount. There has to be a mistake. Jonathan smiled. There isn't. My mother believes people who act with compassion deserve opportunities. Naomi slowly closed the folder. I'm honored. But I can't accept this. Silence filled the room. Even Amelia looked surprised. Jonathan leaned forward. May I ask why? Naomi took a deep breath. Because I didn't help your mother hoping someone would change my life. I helped her because she needed help. If I take this, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering whether I earned it. Or whether it was simply a reward. Eleanor's eyes glistened. Jonathan didn't speak for several seconds. Most people asked him for favors. Some asked for investments. Others asked for jobs. Naomi was the first person who had ever politely refused one. Jonathan stood and walked toward the window. You know, my mother was right about you. Naomi frowned. What do you mean? She said, you'd rather struggle honestly than succeed for the wrong reason. Naomi smiled sadly. I don't know if that's strength or just stubbornness. Eleanor laughed softly. A little of both. Jonathan turned around. Then let me ask you something different. If I don't offer you a job, what would you do tomorrow morning? Naomi answered without hesitation. I'd start looking for another cashier position. And the day after that? The same. And the week after? The same. Jonathan nodded slowly. So you're willing to start over? I've had to start over before. He smiled. I believe you. Then he opened another folder. This isn't a job. Naomi looked down. The heading read, Whitmore Leadership Fellowship, a 12-month paid program. Training, mentorship, professional certifications, community leadership, guaranteed placement afterward. No executive title, no special treatment, only one requirement. Every participant had to earn their place. Jonathan slid the folder toward her. This opportunity isn't because you saved my mother. It's because of the character you showed while doing it. You'll compete with everyone else. If you're good enough, you'll stay. If you're not, you'll leave. Naomi looked at the application. This felt different. It wasn't charity, it was a chance before she could answer. Amelia hurried into the room carrying a tablet. Her face had completely changed. Jonathan, you need to see this. She placed the tablet on the table. Security footage from Carter's Market began playing. The room fell silent. Rick Dawson wasn't just firing Naomi, he was editing the truth. Jonathan stared at the security footage without saying a word. The room had gone completely silent. Rick Dawson's voice echoed from the speakers. You're fired. Then another angle appeared. It wasn't the store camera, it came from a customer. Someone had recorded the entire incident on a cell phone. Naomi could be seen kneeling beside a leaner, checking her pulse, keeping her calm, asking another cashier to call 911, not once, not for a single second. Did she panic? Then another moment appeared. A teenage employee quietly stepped behind Naomi's register and continued checking out customers. Jonathan paused the video. He looked toward Amelia. I thought Rick said Register 7 was abandoned. Amelia nodded, so did corporate. Jonathan rewound the footage. There. The teenage employee had kept the line moving for almost 15 minutes. There had never been an empty checkout lane. Jonathan's jaw tightened. So that report. It was false. Amelia placed another folder on the table. It gets worse. Inside the folder were 6 customer complaint forms, or rather, 6 customer compliments. Every one of them praised Naomi. One customer wrote, that cashier probably saved the woman's life. Another said, she deserves an award, not punishment. A retired firefighter even wrote, I've worked emergency scenes for 30 years. That young woman stayed calmer than many first responders I've seen. Jonathan looked up. Did corporate ever receive these? Amelia slowly shook her head. No. They disappeared. Jonathan didn't need another explanation. Someone had made sure the truth never reached headquarters across town. Rick Dawson unlocked his office. He looked exhausted. He hadn't slept much since Naomi's firing. The story had spread online. A short cell phone clip, less than 40 seconds long, had already gathered thousands of views. Comments poured in. Fire the manager. She saved someone's life. Boycott Carter's Market. Rick slammed his laptop shut. This will blow over. He repeated the words, trying to convince himself, but even he didn't believe them anymore. Just then, his phone rang. Regional director. Rick forced a smile before answering. Good morning, Susan. Her voice was unusually calm. I'll be at your store in 1 hour. Rick frowned. Is something wrong? We'll discuss it when I arrive. The line disconnected. Rick's stomach dropped. Meanwhile, Naomi sat in a neighborhood cafe filling out online job applications. 23 applications, 23 automatic replies. Thank you for your interest. Nothing else. She closed her laptop. Maybe. She really was back at square one. The waitress approached with a refill. Looks like job hunting. Naomi smiled politely. It shows. My husband went through it last year. The waitress placed the coffee pot down. Can I tell you something? Naomi nodded. The right opportunity usually shows up. Right after you've convinced yourself it never will. Naomi laughed softly. I hope you're right. Before she could take another sip, someone entered the cafe, dark suit, confident walk. It was Daniel Brooks, Jonathan Whitmore's chief of staff. He spotted Naomi immediately. Ms. Carter. She stood. I wasn't expecting you. I know. I need 5 minutes. She glanced toward the empty chair. Go ahead. Daniel sat down. For the record, Mr. Whitmore respected your decision yesterday. Naomi smiled. I'm glad. But that's not why I'm here. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. What is this? It's evidence. Naomi looked confused. Daniel continued. You weren't fired because you left your register. You were fired because someone needed a scapegoat. Naomi slowly opened the envelope. Inside were copies of internal reports, emails, time logs, security stills. The more she read, the paler her face became. This. It can't be real. Daniel met her eyes. It is. And it's only the beginning. Eyes. It is. And it's only the beginning. Naomi stared at the documents. Page after page, numbers, emails, inventory reports. None of it made sense. She looked up at Daniel. I don't understand. What does any of this have to do with me? Daniel folded his hands. Nothing. And that's exactly the point. Naomi frowned. What do you mean? You were never the problem. You were the cover. Daniel pulled out one final document. It was an internal audit. The date caught Naomi's attention, 3 months earlier. She read the highlighted sentence. Repeated inventory losses exceeding $480,000. Her eyes widened. Almost $500,000. Daniel nodded. For nearly a year. Expensive electronics, gift cards, and high-end merchandise had been disappearing from Carter's market. Naomi looked confused, but they had cameras everywhere. They did, so why didn't they catch anyone? Daniel looked directly at her. Because someone was changing the reports. Across town, Rick Dawson sat alone inside his office. The regional director had just finished reviewing the latest sales reports. She placed another folder on his desk. Rick. I've got a simple question. He forced a smile. Sure. Where did the missing inventory go? Rick's face didn't change. I've already explained that. Organized retail theft. She slowly slid several photographs across the desk. Security images, warehouse deliveries, loading dock timestamps. One picture showed something Rick wasn't expecting. His own pickup truck parked behind the store after midnight. His heartbeat doubled. Susan watched him carefully. You want to explain this? Rick swallowed hard. There has to be some mistake. She didn't respond. Instead, she stood. You'll remain on administrative leave until the investigation is complete. As she walked toward the door, she stopped. Oh. One more thing. Whitmore Global has requested every document related to Naomi Carter's termination. Rick felt the blood drain from his face. Jonathan Whitmore. He whispered the name under his breath. Now he understood. This wasn't just an employee complaint anymore. A billionaire was looking at his decisions. Meanwhile, Daniel continued explaining everything. Rick was under enormous pressure. The store was failing. The inventory losses were getting worse every month. Naomi interrupted, so he blamed me. Daniel nodded. He needed someone to point at. Someone whose firing would make it look like he was finally taking control. Naomi looked down. So, I lost my job because he was trying to save his own. Daniel answered quietly, yes. For several seconds, Naomi couldn't speak. She wasn't angry anymore. She was disappointed. She remembered every late shift, every holiday she had worked, every time she stayed late because someone called in sick. 4 years, reduced to one convenient lie. Daniel slid one last envelope across the table. This came from Mrs. Whitmore. Naomi opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. Dear Naomi, kindness should never become a reason to suffer. Whether you accept our fellowship or not, please remember this. The world needs more people who stop instead of walking away. You reminded me that goodness still exists. Thank you. Eleanor Whitmore. Naomi read the letter twice, then a third time. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Not because of the job she had lost, but because, for the first time in a very long while, someone had seen her, not as a cashier, not as a struggling single mother, not as a problem, as a person. She folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. Then she looked at Daniel. I've made my decision. Daniel smiled. You'll accept the fellowship. Naomi slowly shook her head. Daniel looked surprised. No. I'm going to earn something even bigger. What do you mean? Naomi stood up. A quiet determination filled her voice. I'm going to clear my name first. The following Monday, Carter's market looked nothing like it had a week earlier. Customers still came in, registers still beeped, employees still stocked shelves, but something had changed, people whispered. Whenever they walked past the manager's office, they lowered their voices. Rick Dawson hadn't smiled in days. Every phone call made him nervous. Every email felt like another problem. Then, his assistant knocked softly. Rick, there's someone here asking for you. Rick rubbed his forehead. Who? I don't know. He says he'll wait. Rick sighed. Send him in. A man in his late 60s walked through the door. Gray hair, work boots, a worn baseball cap. He carried a small black toolbox. Rick frowned. Can I help you? The man smiled politely. My name's Walter Jenkins. I repair surveillance systems. Rick's expression didn't change. So, I worked on your security cameras 3 weeks ago. Rick suddenly felt uneasy. I remember. Walter slowly placed a flash drive on the desk. I found something. Rick looked at the drive, then back at Walter. What kind of something? Walter answered calmly. When I updated your recording system, it automatically backed up every deleted video. Rick's heart skipped a beat. Walter continued. I wasn't looking for anything. But when I saw several files had been erased, I checked why. Rick's hands became clammy. What exactly are you saying? Walter pushed the flash drive closer. I'm saying, someone deleted security footage. And whoever did it didn't realize the backup server kept another copy. Across town, Jonathan Whitmore received an unexpected phone call. It lasted less than 2 minutes. When it ended, he looked at Daniel. Cancel my afternoon. Daniel immediately understood. Something important. Jonathan smiled for the first time in days. I think we just found the missing piece. 2 hours later, inside Whitmore Global's private conference room, Walter connected the flash drive to a large monitor. The recovered footage appeared. The room became completely silent. The first clip showed Naomi helping Alina. Everyone watched carefully. Then, another camera angle appeared. One no one had seen before. Rick Dawson stood inside his office, watching the emergency unfold on his monitor. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't confused. He knew exactly what Naomi was doing. Then the video captured something unbelievable. Rick picked up his office phone. Security. Don't call corporate yet. We'll handle this internally. Jonathan paused the video. His voice became ice cold. He delayed reporting a medical emergency. Walter nodded. There's more. The next clip played after paramedics left. Rick walked into the security room. He spoke quietly to the overnight supervisor. Delete camera 12. And remove every customer compliment before corporate reviews today's paperwork. Daniel stared at the screen. He actually said it. Walter nodded again, every word. Jonathan slowly stood for several long seconds. He didn't say anything. Finally, he looked toward Daniel. Contact Carter's Markets Board of Directors. Today? No, he checked his watch. In 1 hour. Meanwhile, Naomi had no idea any of this was happening. She sat at the kitchen table helping Jordan with his math homework. Jordan frowned at the worksheet. I hate fractions. Naomi laughed. I used to hate them too. You always know everything. She smiled. No, sweetheart. I've just failed enough times to learn. Jordan looked up. Mom, when are you going back to work? Naomi hesitated. I don't know yet. Before she could say anything else, someone knocked on the apartment door. She opened it. Standing outside was Amelia. Behind her was a black SUV, and standing beside it was Jonathan Whitmore himself. Naomi blinked in surprise. Mr. Whitmore. Jonathan gave her a calm smile. I hope we're not interrupting dinner. No, but I wasn't expecting you. Jonathan looked directly into her eyes. I have something you deserve to see. Naomi noticed the seriousness in his voice. What is it? Jonathan answered quietly, the truth. Jonathan answered quietly, the truth. Naomi looked from Jonathan to the black SUV, then back again. His expression wasn't one of victory, it was one of concern. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Naomi nodded. A few minutes later, Jordan stayed inside with Grandma Evelyn while Naomi climbed into the SUV. No one spoke during the drive. Jonathan wasn't the kind of man who rushed important conversations. When they arrived at Whitmore Global, Daniel was already waiting. So is it true? Naomi asked. Jonathan answered softly. You deserve to see it yourself. Inside the executive conference room, the lights dimmed, a large screen flickered to life. Daniel pressed play. Naomi watched herself on the screen. She saw the elderly woman collapse. She saw herself running. She saw herself kneeling beside Alina. Then, a camera angle she'd never seen before appeared. It showed Rick Dawson standing inside the security office, watching everything. Naomi whispered, he knew. Jonathan nodded. He knew exactly why you left your register. The next video began. Rick's voice filled the room. Delete camera 12. Naomi froze. Another clip. Don't send those customer statements to corporate. Another. She'll take the blame. Naomi covered her mouth. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Every lie, every report, every decision had been deliberate, not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, a choice. Tears filled her eyes. I kept asking myself what I'd done wrong. Jonathan looked at her. You did nothing wrong. You were punished because someone else was protecting himself. Daniel closed the laptop. We've already scheduled an emergency meeting with Carter's Markets Board. Naomi slowly nodded. So, it's over. Jonathan didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward Amelia. She handed him another tablet. His face immediately changed. What happened? Naomi asked. Amelia took a deep breath. Rick just filed a formal complaint against you. Naomi stared. What? Jonathan looked frustrated. He claims you assaulted him during the incident. Naomi couldn't believe it. I never even touched him. We know, but he's trying to discredit you before tomorrow's board meeting. Naomi sank into her chair. So now he's making me look violent. Jonathan leaned forward. That's exactly why desperate people are dangerous. At that very moment, Rick Dawson sat inside his empty office. Cardboard boxes surrounded him. Corporate had suspended him. His access badge had stopped working. His career was slipping away. His lawyer sat across from him. Rick, if everything Jonathan Whitmore has is real, we're going to lose. Rick stared at the floor. I can't lose. You already have. The lawyer replied. Rick slowly shook his head. No, there has to be something. Anything, anyone. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I know what really happened. Meet me tonight. Come alone. Rick frowned. Who could possibly know more than he did? Against his lawyer's advice. He went, late that night. Rick pulled into an abandoned warehouse near the edge of Houston. The parking lot was empty. A single light burned inside. He stepped out of his truck. Hello? No answer. He walked deeper inside. Suddenly, the lights switched on. Standing in front of him were Jonathan Whitmore, Daniel, 2 members of Carter's Markets board, and 3 investigators from corporate compliance. Rick stopped walking. Jonathan spoke first. You've been running from the truth. Rick forced a laugh. So this is some kind of setup? Jonathan calmly shook his head. No, this is accountability. One investigator placed a thick folder on the table. Mr. Dawson, we've recovered every deleted email, every security recording, and every financial transaction. Rick's confident expression disappeared. Then the investigator said the one sentence Rick had feared more than anything. We know where the missing money went. Rick closed his eyes. The room fell completely silent. The executive boardroom at Carter's Market headquarters had never felt so quiet. Around the polished oak table sat 12 board members, corporate attorneys, regional executives, and the company's CEO. At the far end of the room, Rick Dawson sat alone. His suit was perfectly pressed, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Across from him, Naomi Carter sat beside Jonathan and a leaner Whitmore. She had never imagined she'd return to anything connected to Carter's Market. Certainly not like this. The board chair cleared his throat. Mr. Dawson, you've reviewed the evidence. Would you like to explain your actions? Rick looked around the room for a brief moment. He considered denying everything until another screen lit up. The recovered security footage, the deleted emails, the altered reports, the hidden customer statements, every lie. Displayed in perfect order, there was nowhere left to hide. Rick slowly lowered his head. I made the decision. Silence. I deleted the footage. I ordered my staff to remove the customer statements. And I blamed Naomi. Because I believed firing one employee would distract corporate from asking questions about the missing inventory. One board member leaned forward. So you knowingly terminated an innocent employee? Rick nodded. Yes. Another director asked quietly, and the missing inventory? Rick closed his eyes. I approved fake inventory adjustments. I thought I'd fix everything before anyone noticed, but every month, the losses got bigger. I kept lying to cover the previous lie. The room remained silent. Not one person defended him. Naomi listened carefully. She expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, she felt sadness. This man had destroyed his own life. Long before he destroyed hers, the board chair turned toward Naomi. Ms. Carter, on behalf of Carter's Market, I offer our deepest apology. You should never have been treated the way you were. Naomi thanked him quietly. Then the CEO stood. We would like to offer you your position back, effective immediately. The room waited for her answer. Jonathan glanced toward Naomi but said nothing. This decision belonged to her. Naomi smiled politely. I appreciate the apology. I truly do. She paused, but respectfully. I'm not coming back. Several people looked surprised. Naomi continued. I don't want the job I lost. I want the life I almost gave up believing I deserved. The room fell silent again. Even Jonathan smiled, because he knew that answer couldn't be bought. The board chair nodded. I understand. Then allow us to do one more thing. He slid a document across the table. Naomi opened it. Her eyes widened. The company was awarding her full back pay, compensation for wrongful termination, a public apology, and a $500,000 community kindness fund in her name, to recognize employees across the country who chose compassion over convenience. Naomi looked speechless. I don't know what to say. Eleanor gently reached across the table and took Naomi's hand. Then don't say anything. Just keep being the woman who stopped. Tears filled Naomi's eyes for the first time since losing her job. She felt something she hadn't felt in weeks, peace. As everyone prepared to leave, Jonathan stopped Naomi near the doorway. "I have one last question." Naomi smiled. "I'm almost afraid to hear it." Jonathan laughed softly. "When all of this started, I offered you a job. You said no." "I did. I'm going to ask one final time, but this time, it's different." Naomi looked curious. Jonathan handed her a single folder. The title read, "The Whitmore Community Hope Initiative." Jonathan smiled. "I don't want you to work for me. I want you to lead something with me." Naomi slowly looked up. "What exactly is it?" Jonathan answered. "A place where no one is ever punished for doing the right thing." Naomi stared at him. She had no idea that the greatest chapter of her life was only beginning 6 months later. The ribbon stretched across the entrance of a beautiful new community center in downtown Houston. A crowd filled the sidewalk. Families, teachers, store employees, local reporters, and dozens of people who had once been strangers. Until kindness brought them together. Above the entrance, a simple sign read, "The Hope Center," founded on one act of courage. Naomi stood quietly behind the stage. She wasn't nervous. She was overwhelmed just 6 months earlier. She had walked out of Carter's Market carrying a cardboard box, wondering how she would pay next month's rent. Today, she was opening a place that would help thousands of families find jobs, receive emergency assistance, and get free career training. Jordan tugged gently on her sleeve. "Mom, they're waiting for you." Naomi smiled. "You ready?" Jordan grinned. "I've been ready." Jonathan Whitmore stepped to the microphone. He looked across the crowd before speaking. "People often believe the world changes because of billionaires." He paused. "They're wrong. The world changes because ordinary people make extraordinary choices." He turned toward Naomi. 6 months ago, one cashier ignored company rules because saving a human life mattered more. That decision didn't just save my mother's life. It reminded all of us what real leadership looks like. The audience erupted into applause. Billionaire Whitmore wiped away a tear. Jonathan smiled. "Today, I'm honored to introduce the executive director of the Hope Center, Ms. Naomi Carter." The applause grew even louder. Naomi walked onto the stage for a moment. She simply looked at the crowd. She recognized several faces: the teenage cashier who had covered her register, the paramedic who had responded that afternoon, the waitress from the cafe who had encouraged her not to give up. Even several former Carter's Market employees had come. Naomi took a slow breath. "When I lost my job, I thought I had lost my future, but I learned something." She looked toward Jordan. "Sometimes, life closes one door because it's trying to lead you to a better one." She smiled. "I don't stand here because someone powerful rescued me. I stand here because a few people chose to tell the truth. And because one woman," she looked at Alina, "refused to forget a stranger who stopped to help." Many people in the audience wiped away tears. At the back of the crowd, a familiar figure quietly watched the ceremony. Rick Dawson, no expensive suit, no manager's badge, just jeans, and a plain work shirt. After the investigation, he had lost his position. He had repaid the money he had stolen, and after accepting responsibility, he had begun rebuilding his life from the bottom. When the ceremony ended, he slowly approached Naomi. She noticed him immediately. The crowd fell silent. Rick stopped a few feet away. "I don't expect forgiveness." Naomi didn't speak. He swallowed hard. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I destroyed your career because I was too afraid to admit my own failures." For several seconds, Naomi simply looked at him. Then she answered quietly, "I forgave you a long time ago." Rick looked surprised. "But forgiveness," she continued, "doesn't erase consequences. It simply allows both people to move forward." Rick nodded slowly. "Thank you." He turned and quietly walked away, not as a villain, but as a man who finally understood the cost of his choices. As the sun began to set, Jordan slipped his hand into Naomi's. "You know what, Mom?" "What? You still saved her." Naomi smiled. "No, sweetheart. We saved each other." Alina laughed softly. "I couldn't agree more." Jonathan looked around the busy community center. Children were laughing. Volunteers were helping families. Job interviews had already begun inside. Hope was everywhere. Naomi looked up at the building one last time. She remembered the day she had walked out of Carter's Market with nothing but a cardboard box. She thought she had lost everything. She never imagined that losing one job would help her discover her true purpose. Because in the end, they didn't fire the wrong woman, they underestimated the right one. They underestimated the right one.